Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to another episode of the Other Side of the Story podcast, where we're bringing to you life-inspiring stories of people who, at this point in their life, have done some great things, successful things. But our whole concept is how'd they get there? There's always a backstory to a story. We have the right man on today. I'm so excited because I have Jamey Paugh on, who's going to bring a different element to us today about living a generous lifestyle, living in a world where there's so much greed, selfishness, so much debt. And so he's going to bring some concepts to you, some teachings that's going to set people free. And I am so excited to have him. Jamey Paugh is the CEO and founder of the Generosity Group, where they go in and talk to companies, CEOs, entrepreneurs, pastors, leaders, and teach them a blueprint of their life and their business being a giving back to other people in their community, even around the world. I love that. He's born and raised in Florida. One thing I love about Jamey is he loves baseball, and so do I. But his grandfather was a pastor for 55 years, y'all. 55 years pastoring a church. He needs a gold medal for that. Jamey is been in itinerant ministry for 13 years. He's married to Amber, I believe, right?
Yep.
Has 2 children, 4-year-old son, Jet, 2-year-old daughter, Banks. I love the name Banks. And one thing about Jamey that I have to, again, connect with him, he's in Philadelphia, where the Eagles have all the Georgia Bulldogs on their team, which really makes them the greatest team on the planet. That's why they're so good. And he also helped plant a church there. And just his story is amazing, y'all, of where he's been and what he's doing right now. And really supernaturally how God challenged him and his wife. He's going to get into that, how he's just totally got him out of debt. So, Jamey, we're so excited to have you, man, to hear your story.
Oh, so good to be here. I need to take you on the road with me and let you do my introductions before I get up to talk, man. Whoever you just talked about, they're world class, and I want to be that guy.
Because you are that guy. So, man, we're so excited to have you.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I know that you are building an incredible group, a tribe, an audience who are world shakers. They're movers. They're making it happen. They're making a difference. So I know we're going to have a lot of fun today because we're going to talk about things that they're already living. And the goal would be that by the end of this, we could pour some jet fuel on that generosity fire and really go change the world.
No, I like that. I really do. And I met Jamey really end of September in Orlando. I've heard great things about him for years, honestly, through Bishop Dorian Morgan, Dr. Joy Morgan, who I've known for over 15 years, and met Jamey personally at a conference, heard him speak, and just things in me just leapt, Jamey, just leaped inside of me, man, because you just stirred some things up about my faith and about my giving, and really just connected real well with you 2 months ago. And here he is on the podcast today.
Yeah, that was a fun time. We really got a chance to get to know each other there and also share some stories, which I love. Just about what God's done and what we're planning to do, both of us in ministry. And so in business, I'm excited to be here again. Thanks for having me.
Yes, man. Let's get into it right now. But just before we get into where you're at in Philadelphia and are going around the world, speaking to corporations and leaders and all that with your generosity group, take us back a little bit of what started being birthed in your life, maybe mentality wise, capacity wise. I believe you were born in Florida. You played baseball. Your grandfather was in ministry for 55 years. So you saw some things and you learned some things through that journey early in life. So kind of start us out a little bit with that.
Yeah, there's 2 major things that I picked up from playing sports and then from being around my grandfather. Number 1 was score early and score often.
I like that.
In life, you've got to score early and you have to score often. You've got to play offense. You've got to move. You can't be consistently playing defense. There are moments that we're on the defensive side, but when we're on offense, we go full board as fast as we can, as hard as we can. We score as many points as we possibly can. And the reason for that is we're not in this just for fun. And I love to have fun, but we're in it to win, right?
Yeah.
We were born to win. We're winners. God created us. He isn't a loser. And so winners are aggressive in a good way. Winners go out to win the game. And so we don't play small, we play big. We serve a big God, so we're going to play big. We don't think small, we think big. We don't dream small, we dream big, right? And so it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle, it's generosity, right? You think big, you think bold, you think abundant. And so when I hit the field of life, I want to score early in the field of life. I want to score often on the field of life. And the best way to do that is help as many people as you possibly can. And the second major thing that I've learned is consistency, right? So consistent. Jeff Olson says it like this in his book, The Slight Edge. He says, consistent, persistent with a good attitude over a long period of time.
Man,
so
that's good.
you don't win in ministry and in life. You don't go 55 years of pastoring if you don't have this attitude of consistent, persistent with a good attitude over that long period of time. Because in life, things will happen. You will have good times. You will have bad times. You will be in dry seasons. You will be in harvest seasons, right? There's an ebb and flow to this. But if you don't have a long-term view, if you don't have that 30,000-foot view and go, listen, I'm in this for life, right? I'm in this until I take my last breath, then something will always come and you'll get that Mike Tyson right hook to the jaw, right? It's going to happen. Life will do it to you. And if you're not careful, you'll give up. But if you're just consistent, persistent with a good attitude over a long period of time, you got a big mindset, you're bold, you show up, I'm going to score, I'm going to win. It's really hard to give up if that's your attitude.
No, that's so good already, man. Just you're challenging and inspiring and encouraging people by even those statements, man. I'm so fired up even now. But so in playing sports, did you learn some of that? Like, what does sports teach you in some of that mentality?
Yeah. So there's a discipline to it, right? You gotta show up on a regular basis. You have to perfect your craft. Coach used to say, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I had a real unique experience. Just even as a young kid in Little League, I had a baseball coach who operated our team as if we were a major league ball club. So we practiced 5 days a week. We had a game once a week. We had a hitting coach, we had a pitching coach, we had a fielding coach. Of course, he had the assistant coach. He was the manager. I mean, you're talking about Little League. Like, this doesn't exist. We had practice uniforms for even days. We had practice uniforms for odd days. We had a certain bag for certain games. I mean, we had the whole thing. It was as if we were already in the major leagues. He had an entire playbook, right? And so we had to learn the playbook. He tested us on the playbook, right? Well, when you run over a course of 3 years, the team was 101 wins, 15 losses, right? We won district championships. When I was a kid, we were the team, and he would move us out of that little league and he would place us in traveling tournaments, right? But he treated us, even as 9, 10, 11, and 12-year-olds, he treated us like adults, and he expected the best out of us. And so I really learned that there is a discipline to be successful, and you've got to show up. And when you show up, it's perfect practice, right? You give it everything you have every time you're on the field. And that was the phrase that came from him, was score early and score often. So, most coaches, right, and in any sport, typically, do you want to bat first or do you want to bat last? And I want to be the home team. I want to bat last. When in the NFL, do you want to receive the kick in the first half or the second half? Oh, we'll defer to the second half. Well, for him, he's like, no, I want to get on offense right now, right this second. For lack of better terms, I want to punch you right in the mouth, and I want to come out strong, right? And that's in ministry. What I find, Bishop, is that a lot of churches, a lot of ministries don't have that attitude. It's almost passive. Right? It's real passive. And what I say is, we're from Philly, so we're not passive. We're not passive aggressive. In Philly, we're aggressive, right? And in the game of life, especially when you're attacking an enemy that we're attacking, and like you said, there's so much greed, there's so much debt, there's so much pain, there's so much hate, there's all these things. We have to come from the other side of it and go, no, we're going to make a difference. We're going to make a change, and we're going to give it all that we have.
I love that. Seriously. Because again, people need to hear that today in watching this, to understand their mentality and their ability to realize who they are, right? Created in God's image, we're all winners in God already. That's good.
Yep.
So we start, and I've always said this, and you are, definitely confirming it. We always fight from victory, not for
Yeah.
victory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. So when you learn those things in your life, and what caused you to, or what led you from Florida to Philadelphia?
Yeah, it was the church plant. So we were in Ormond Beach, Florida,
Okay.
and we were at Jim Rayleigh's church there in Ormond Beach. And I got a phone call from a great friend of mine who I grew up with in Orlando. And he said, I'm planting a church. Will you move here? And I said, no, absolutely will not move to the inner city of Philadelphia. I live on the beach. And so we
Yes.
sent a packet, and in the packet, it said, will you give to us? Will you pray for us? Will you come be with us? And so he calls me. So he sends the packet, calls me again. I get it. I guess he tracked it. He said, hey, did you get my packet? And I said, sure. And I said, we're sending you a check. And he said these words. He goes, I don't want your check. I don't want your money. He goes, I want you. And I said, one of those two statements is a lie, because there's not a church planter on the face of the planet that does not want someone to send them money. And
Right.
he said, man, you got to move to Philly. And so we came and we visited Philadelphia. Just by chance. We were visiting, we were passing through, and something happened in that moment where God just shifted things over the next 90 days. And little did we know, from the time we visited to the time we moved to Philadelphia was 6 months, and we had no plans to do that. And so the church here launched September of 2014, and we're still here today, 9 years later. There's 5 locations. We're running just north of 1,500 through all those locations. I serve on the board here at the church, and God's really been doing some incredible things. But little did I know that I never planned to move from Florida, but moving from Florida to the inner city of Philadelphia was a wild change in our life. But it's been good because I've learned so much over the last 9 years.
Yeah. So how did it make you feel, like just uprooting your wife? I guess had no children at the time.
No
but
children.
You uprooted your wife to move to the inner city, off a beach. How'd that make you feel, in the sense of, was there fear involved? What?
Yeah, there was a little bit of every emotion. I mean, she was on board 100% when we were moving here. Now, when we got here and realized what the lifestyle was going to be like, beach community versus inner city drug-ridden community, it was a challenging couple years. It really was, to make that move. But when you know that God has planted you somewhere, and when you know you have a purpose, you have to use those same principles that we talked about early, right? Consistent, persistent, with a good attitude over a long period of time. And that's what it would take to get through that, because it would have been real easy to pack the bags and move back to Florida. But we were here on mission. We were here on purpose. And we've made a big difference. There's been a big difference that's been made in our own lives, and we've been able to make this huge impact in the city. And I don't believe if we would have stayed in Florida that we would have seen the same results. And sometimes in life, it takes physically moving to get out of being comfortable. I hear the statement, I'm going to come here and I'm going to die here. Well, you've already determined that you're going to build your place of comfort. Right. Yep. You've already determined that, because I'm here, I'm never going anywhere else. And the way I look at it is I'm never going anywhere else because I want to go somewhere else. And I'm never looking to go somewhere else, but I'm always open to the Lord leading me somewhere else.
That's good.
So it's just, all of this is just, at some level, all of this is just a transition season, because we will do our ultimate transition one day. Right? Life is but a vapor, here one moment, God the next. So I'm all in where I'm at. When I'm there, you got to be there. I'm nowhere else, right? I'm right here with you right now on this podcast. I'm nowhere else. My brain's not anywhere else. But in life, there will always come transition. So I'm always waiting, right? Lord, I'm open. I'm listening, right? And when you're ready, you can speak. But for now, I'm going to give it all I have right here. And that's the other side of it, is you have some people that are just trying to run from their problems. They're trying to run from their issues. They're trying to find a way out. And here's the reality. You got to, how you exit this season is how you enter the next season. And the seeds you plant in this season, you will reap in the next season. So there should be seeds of consistency. There should be seeds of hard work. There should be seeds of joy. There should be the right seeds, because if you plant the wrong seeds, you can run, but you're going to end up harvesting them.
Yeah, because you take yourself with you wherever you go, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You can't outrun the things you're unwilling to fix.
Yeah. No, I think that really speaks to us again, because I think we all see around us, and we're not careful. We do get in a place of just staying comfortable and not wanting to be uncomfortable. But in uncomfortableness is when we grow. Is that correct?
Sure, totally. Yeah, pain is such a great teacher, right?
Sure.
Being uncomfortable is such a great teacher. Many years ago, I heard the story of the farmer who had the dog, and the dog was sitting up underneath the steps, and the farmer's friend comes over, and he looks at him. He says, "Hey, man," he said, "your dog's not only underneath the steps, your dog is sitting on a nail. Are you going to do something about it?" And the farmer looked back at him and said, "No, man, he'll move when it hurts bad enough."
Oh, that's good.
Right. And in life, sometimes it takes pain to get people to move, which is, I think about just us and our finances. Like, how did we get here? Because in 2018, I woke up one day in the Pocono Mountains, and the pain of our situation forced me to move and ask God, what can I do to get out of this? Right.
Yeah.
You talked about earlier, crushing debt, 6 figures in debt. 11 credit cards fully maxed out. This is 5 years ago, right? Owed money to the in-laws, owed money to my grandma, student loans, all the things, right? And there's this crushing debt.
Yeah.
We lived like this. We'd been tired of living like this, but we weren't willing to do anything to change it. And the reality is, the world would tell you that, well, what you need to do is you need to work harder, and you should work hard. And they would tell you to pick up a second and third job, and it's not bad to do that. But I didn't want a temporary fix. I wanted a long-term solution, right? Good, and so here I am in the Pocono Mountains, and I'm reading scripture, and scripture tells me this, that the debtor is slave to the lender, which I was the slave, right? And then scripture tells me that the generous will prosper. Well, I knew in that moment that I had to move, and I had to do a God move, and the God move in our finances was to be more generous. And so we started this journey of generosity 5 years ago, and we went from 10% tithers to outrageous givers, and we moved up the ladder, man. We went from 10% to 20%, and 20% to 30%, and 30% to 40%, and 40% to 50%. And this year we've got goals to hit, 60%, right? And just give. And you reap what you sow. It's a principle. And what we saw happen was God supernaturally show up in our finances in so many different ways. 35 months into this whole generosity lifestyle, we were positioned to be debt free. God gave us the opportunity to buy our home $100,000 under market value in the hottest real estate market Philadelphia has ever seen. I mean, just miracle after miracle. And none of that existed. We were gifted a car during the just the stories go on and on about what God has done. We could have 10 podcasts about the last 5 years. The point being is, it took a pain point to get us to move. But when we moved, we had to move in a God direction. So it's not just moving, it's moving in the way God would want you to move. And it's doing something that creates long-term solutions, right? Not temporary short-term fixes.
I need to back you up for a second, because you went through that, and there are people watching, listening, that are in debt, don't know how to get out of debt. They're frustrated. They feel oppressed, maybe depressed, all that financially. And you're telling us that you're $125,000 in debt. Yep. And you're telling us God leads you through scripture, is speaking to you about give your way out.
Yes.
So you and your wife started giving out of your need and out of everything you needed. No doubt you wanted to keep it, but you started giving it. So just speak on that for a second about what it took as faith and obedience, because you've already testified to that, exemplified that by leaving Florida, coming to Philadelphia, obedience, consistency, discipline, hard work. But just back to that story of teach people right now hey man, look at your debt. Look, there's a system, not like the world system, correct? There's a kingdom system. And you start operating in that. And just really, I just want you to kind of just elaborate a little bit on how you went from 10% to 60% and just what it felt like.
Yeah, it's taken 5 years to get there, right? there in the Poconos, when I was reading scripture and I realized, okay, this is God's plan to prosperity. This is God's way to build wealth, is through generosity. That is the kingdom plan. It's upside down finances.
Yeah.
I realized that we were not generous people. And here's the other thing. Let's get real practical.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could have happened? I was $125,000 in debt. I had $2 in the bank account. What's the worst that could happen to us? It couldn't get any worse, right? We were at rock bottom. So I think sometimes people overanalyze this and they're worried. I don't know what they're worried about. The reality is, when you're in that type of crushing debt and when you're that bad with your finances, you need to make a change. Right. And the best change you could make is to do it God's way. And so what we heard very specifically, we prayed about it. Okay, we know we're going to be generous. What does it look like? And we felt like the Lord asked us to double our giving. That's what it looked like to start. That just still small voice. Hey, I want you to double your giving. And so we got on a plan. And I actually have a resource. I'll give it away for free. At the end of this, you can link it and people can get our tool that we use. It's called the Generosity Blueprint. And so we use the Generosity Blueprint. God downloaded it to us. And this is what we did. We would give. The first and foremost thing we would do is we would give. We heard from God a number. Okay, this is what I want you to give this year. And so in 2017, we gave $5,000. So we heard the Lord very specifically, double your giving to 10 grand. So what did we do? Every single time a check came in, we would give towards that 10 grand, right? We'd make gift. Well, we were only making $50,000 a year. So we were tithers, but we were never givers. And so we're doing this, which mathematically didn't make sense. But we said, you know what, Lord, we're going to do it your way. So we would give, and then we paid our bills. And then we decided we were going to start attacking that debt. Well, we didn't have much left over for the debt at that point. So we would, attack it $25, $50, right? Yeah. Well, you can see in our finances in 2018, the moment we started giving generously, it's like it was up and to the right. Boom. All of a sudden our income started to grow like it had never grown before. So we went from, $5,000 to $10,000 in 2018. Well, our income went from $56,000 to $72,000. So $16,000 jump. Well, the scripture. So look at this. If we can do the math, I wish I had a whiteboard because I would draw it up for people who are watching. Now you got to imagine this if you're just listening. Yeah. Our income went up by 16,000. The Lord asked us to go from $5,000 to $10,000 givers. This is where scripture says, for God gives seed to the sower. It wasn't until we started sowing that did our income increase, right? So then we get into 2019 and we hear the Lord very clearly, okay, I want you to go from, we ended up hitting 12,500 that year in giving. So we surpassed the 10, went to 12,500 on 72K in income. Then we heard the Lord clearly say, give 30 this year. Well, that's nuts. That's crazy. Dude, wow. 30,000 on 72. I mean, God, that doesn't make any sense. But by faith, knowing, hey, this is the Lord's way to wealth. This is the Lord's way to prosperity. This is the Lord's way to, more than anything, freedom. So we went from 12,500, we hit the 30,000. Well, in that year, our income went from 72 to 135. Never had I seen a jump like that. 2020, give 50. Well, we hit the 50 that year. Everybody knows what happens in 2020. We went from 30K to 50K in giving. Our income went from 135 to 157. Amazing. 2021 hits. We hear the Lord say, give more. It was very, very specific. Give more. So we went from 50K in giving to 70K in giving in 21, and our income went to 218. Last year, 22, we heard the Lord say, give more again. Okay, outdo that. So in last year, we gave 74,000. Watch this. The income dropped back to 151. And at a moment with the Lord last year, now there's somebody that's going to hear this. This is for them. At a moment at the end of last year, I was very frustrated. Wow, that's not how, I didn't think that's how it works. When you give, you receive, right? God gives seed to the sower. And I felt like the Lord say to me so specifically, Jamey, you've put me in a box. You put me in a box. You think I work just in a calendar year, but I work on my own time. Do you remember Lazarus? Yeah. He was 4 days dead in everybody else's eyes. Right. Stop putting me in a box. Just do what I say to do. And that's the consistent, persistent with a good attitude over a long period of time. If you jump into this lifestyle of generosity and think it's a 2-week or 30-day thing, or you're going to have some 90-day plan, I would advise you don't even get started. But if you can see this as a lifestyle, which you should, and listen, we all start one day at a time. Okay.
Right.
But the attitude has to be, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it consistently, and I'm going to have faith, and I'm going to believe. Well, little did I know, in January of this year, the largest check that had ever come into our ministry came into our ministry. I didn't know that was coming. It came out of nowhere. Boom.
Yeah.
And the Lord spoke to me and said, you put me in a box last year, but I have something new this year. And so that's how we got here. And the Lord stretched us this year and asked us to give, as I said, a very, very significant portion of our income to certain projects. So, but we're on the journey, we're on faith, and that's been the supernatural accelerator. And to be clear, this year is back over last year income wise, and it may end up actually being more than what came in 2021.
And so your whole life shifted, your whole family's life, it just totally shifted from, being in debt, overwhelmed by debt.
Yep.
And then creating an obedience to a plan, operating that plan, and seeing just really, we say miracles, but at the same time, it's principles, right?
Principles. Yeah.
Yeah.
Principles
you're operating it.
Yeah. Yeah. We just believe the principle and we live it and we work it and we see the fruit of it. You can't see the fruit of a principle if you don't live the principle.
Yeah. That's good.
You have to work the process. You got to do what it says, right? And here's the thing: seed, time, harvest. Most of us want to go seed, harvest, time.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just believe, I'm so convinced that we have not even witnessed, we have not even reaped yet on seeds that have been sown even 3 or 4 years ago. We're just starting to see some fruits of seeds that we sowed 5 years ago. Right.
Yeah.
And we haven't even seen the harvest on what's been sown since then.
That's good, because again, I'll go back to lifestyle. I think a lot of people that are watching and listening, sometimes we get caught up in not being selfish, but at the same time going, like you just said, it's a 30-day deal. I'm going to get out of debt. And maybe for selfish reasons in the sense of, but it is for freedom. Yeah. But you're talking about a generous lifestyle.
Yeah. The world of the generous, Proverbs says this: the world of the generous gets larger and larger. The world of the stingy gets smaller and smaller. So if you want your life to get larger, you have to be generous. And in the business world, in corporate America, there's case studies on that. Go research Chick-fil-A. Go research Hobby Lobby. I mean, when you do case studies on these things, you find that they live this open-handed approach to business. Well, what happens? It just keeps getting larger and larger. No matter what anyone says, no matter what attack comes against that business. Have you ever just noticed they just keep expanding?
I know. And they're closed on Sunday, man.
And they're closed on Sunday.
Yeah.
And they just keep expanding. You cannot stop a generous person, and you definitely cannot stop a generous corporation. You can't do it. It's impossible, because the principle works. Right? It works. What you sow, you reap. And here's the thing that's interesting about it is the principle works for the believer and the unbeliever.
Right.
What you sow, you reap.
Right.
So we should believe, we should be believers. We should believe in the Lord. But this principle works for those that do not believe, which then makes it even crazier to me that believers don't practice the principle. Which then again, I would question, are you actually a believer? But that's for another podcast.
Right. Don't you feel like that's a lack of trust sometimes?
Total lack of trust.
We don't trust what his word says.
Yeah. And which is, again, to me, it's just me. It's bizarre to me, because if you can trust him for your eternity, right? Why couldn't you trust him with the finances? Right. Here's the thing. This is when you break it down, what someone is saying is, I believe in a God I cannot see. Yeah. I believe in this dude that lived on earth. He came through a virgin birth. Right. So, I mean, you believe that. I believe that this guy came and died on a cross and lived a sinless life. I believe he rose from the dead. I believe that if I show up to church every single week and I lift my hands, and I believe that if I pray again to some God I can't see,
Yeah.
that it's all going to work out. But when it comes to finances, oh no, 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 no. We couldn't trust him there. Why? Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And what we're finding is our treasure it's selfish, right?
Yep.
Now all of a sudden that money is safety, it's security, right? We've put our trust in the dollar.
Yeah.
And we haven't put our trust in God. So how do you believe all those other things, but yet you don't believe that what you reap or what you sow, you reap, and you don't believe that God's in it for you financially? It doesn't connect. When you logically start to break it down, you realize, oh, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
You know, and didn't Jesus say, I want you to speak on this for a second, then we'll get into how you started your company and founded it and what you're doing now. But didn't Jesus say we can't serve, God and mammon?
Yeah.
What
Can't
does
serve
that
two
say to us?
masters. Yeah. Well, what it says is your trust has to be in one thing and one thing only. And either your trust is in the Lord and then you use his financial plan, or your trust is in money and the world and you use that plan.
Yeah.
And as we all know, one is everlasting and one is temporary.
Yes.
So we have a choice to make. And the promise of the kingdom finances, the promise is wealth.
Yeah.
It's good news, right?
Yeah.
It's generational wealth. That's the best news. So
Yeah.
it's protection.
I love that. I love that, man. Because again, at the same time, it's back to people's trust, their level of faith, right? And I've always said this, Jamey, is that money has never left the earth.
Nope.
Resource. There should be no poverty. There should be no starvation. People should have food. But it goes back to, again, governments, corruption, greed, all these things start happening. But you and your wife are living a lifestyle that is so opposite, is so contradictory to the world. And before I get into this question, another question is coming to me right now is, how did you overcome the peer pressure or people talking about, even your own family maybe, man, what are y'all doing? Why are you giving? Did you have to battle some of that?
Yeah, it's that's interesting. You have a lot of voices.
Yes.
And a lot of, the number one voice that I heard was, you should save more. You should save more. You should save more. And I'm all about savings, but I couldn't save my way out of debt. I couldn't save my way into financial freedom, because what the Lord was doing was he was dealing with my heart. Right. And so I had a heart issue, and we had previous businesses. We had done other ventures. We had worked multiple jobs and it never worked out. The Lord's like, I want to teach you my way. And so, people would always ask, well, if you give this large sum of money, what are you going to do when the bill is due? I said, that's up to God to take care of. Right. Because I determined in my heart what I was going to give. I heard from the Lord, hey, give this much. So if you're sensitive and the Lord shares with you to give it, have you ever seen the righteous forsaken?
Right.
You ever seen them begging for bread?
No.
No. And so that's where the trust comes. It's the realization of this. It's not mine anyways. 100% of it came from God. Now, any that I give belongs to God. It's not mine. I'm just a steward. I mean, in essence, I'm a small bank that the Lord deposits money into, but he's the owner of it. And he says, well, that's my money. So I want you to do with it this. I want you to do with it that. Right. So for me, 100% of it isn't mine anyways. How did I earn it? How did I get it? Well, I earned it and I got it because of the breath in my lungs that the Lord gave me. Because of the giftings and talents that he gave me, because of the brain that he gave me, because of the arms and the legs that he gave me, because of the life that he gave me. All of it came from him. I came from him. The resources came from him. So as a steward, I'm just going, God, what do you want to do with it? Well, he's a good God, so I get to enjoy it. Of course I do, right? He loves me. He cares for me. But I'm always listening. Okay, what do you want me to do? Where do you want it to go? Because I know that all things work together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. So there's not a way at all that I could give into a place of poverty. And I've never met the person who gave their way into poverty. I haven't met them. They don't exist. It's impossible.
It's good. It's good.
But you can hoard your way into poverty.
Yes.
I've met a lot of those people.
Yeah, you're right.
But you can't give your way into it.
your lifestyle again is an example and a testimony. You're not just talking it, you're doing it. And
Yep.
so you changed gears, I feel like, you're a speaker, you are, filling in, pastoring, doing these things, traveling
Yep.
around the world with the gospel, which is the good news. What led you to start the generosity group, and tell us about that and what you're doing with that group?
Yeah, it's so good. I had been traveling and speaking on this particular topic of generosity week in and week out. And what I found was that it was good for a moment for the individual. It was good for a moment for the church, and it produced something. But the long-term residual effect of it, eventually over time, people didn't stick to the process, right? So they would hear it, their faith would be built, they would try it, but then there was no resourcing. There was nothing for them to learn, to grow, to develop in this area. And listen, faith comes by hearing. So we launched the generosity group to create generous people. And when you create generous people, you create a generous church. And when you create a generous church, you create a generous community, and a generous community can change the world, right? And so we exist now, not just to come do live speaking engagements, not just to do Sunday mornings and conferences. We exist to create generous people. So we have built our generosity journey. And so we have a digital library where we are just filling it with resources, with content. We're filling it with development tools, with discipleship material. We do strategy, we do consulting, we also do live speaking, right? So now we've built an entire firm around solving the generosity problem, right? So people will get into campaigns, and campaigns are what they are, but campaigns, all they do is band-aid a bigger problem. The issue is generous people. So what if, this is the question that I always pose, what if you found 10 Jameys in your local church, and you found 10 Jameys that were tithing $5,000 a year, but over the course of 5-6 years, they went from $5,000 tithers to $50,000 generous givers, or $100,000 a year generous givers? What if you found 20 Jamie? The question is, what would happen if you actually created generous people?
Yeah.
What would happen, right? We don't need to do big campaigns. We need to create generous people.
Yeah.
And here's what I found. To create generous people, you have to be a generous person.
Yeah.
So that's why we created the generosity group. So we have one vertical of business per se, which is the largest vertical of business today, and that's operating in the church space, the nonprofit space. But God's begun to open doors in corporate America, and now we're going in there to create generous companies, right? So we're using that Chick-fil-A model, we're using that Hobby Lobby model, and we just believe we can change the world. We do believe that.
No, I agree with you. Because again, resources in everybody's life,
Yep.
regardless of what level, right? We all can be more generous people. And I love the statement you're talking about, creating generous people.
Yeah.
Because that's what we need more of in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So we love it. I mean, I just got back from South Dakota. I was in South Dakota for 5 days doing an on-site strategy session, and we're taking everything that they envision, right? All of the dreams and the goals of the church. And then we're reverse engineering it right back to today and going, okay, how do we create a generous staff that creates a generous culture here? And then how do we create generous people inside of the church that live to give, that think about giving, that their whole lifestyle is, how can I be generous, right? And it's generous with your money, but it's just it's an attitude, right? It's an approach to life. It's all the way back to the beginning. It's we're gonna win. We're born to win, right? Yeah. We're aggressive in attacking life and going, listen, it's big, it's bold, it's abundant. We win in the end. So let's do everything we can do with the short time we have. Ed Milet says, max out your life. Yeah. That's the approach to it. And so that's why we exist.
No, I love that, because, being in ministry, I have myself in a way for a long time, and, pastoring for a long time. It is frustrating, I guess, in ministry for people. I just want you to hit on this about, you feel like you have vision, you have great community things you want to do, You want to do things around the world because it's all about helping people,
Sure.
creating a better environment. But yet it's a struggle, it feels like sometimes, doesn't it? A struggle to, lack of better words, convince people to give,
Sure.
to
Sure.
try to, because a lot of people use this guilt trip to give. But
Yeah.
what you're saying, which I agree totally, is if we had this generous mindset already and a generous lifestyle already, it wouldn't be where pastors and leaders and people of business have to struggle like pulling teeth when they start talking about money. You know the deal. You start
Yeah.
talking about money in church, the whole atmosphere changes. Oh my God.
He just wants my money.
Yes.
Yeah. The approach that I take on this is I'm not begging anybody to give anything.
Right.
Instead, I'm sharing with you the good news of what it means to live a generous life. Everybody's tuned into WIIFM. What's in it for me? Everybody's tuned into that, right?
Yeah.
The Bible's very clear on what's in it for the giver. Generosity is really all about the giver, right?
Yeah.
And we can cast big vision and we can talk about reaching a city, we can talk about reaching a world, and we should.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of the day, people care about how it's going to affect their personal life. And I've got good news. It's going to affect your life in an incredibly positive way.
Yes.
You don't give and then you're without. You give and it gets multiplied.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just multiplied in how God uses it to fund the vision. It's what happens in your personal house when you give. The Bible says that it's multiplied, right?
Yeah.
It's pressed down, it's shaken together, it's running over, right? God will pour it back to you. He'll give it back. So that's the good news. So when I go to people, I say, listen, when you give, there's something good in it for you. Now, I'm not the Lord of the harvest, so I can't tell you when it's going to come back, and I can't tell you how it's going to come back. But what I can tell you is it will come back.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I don't have to beg anybody.
Yeah.
I literally don't. At the conference that you and I were at together, there was somebody in the room that at the end of service decided that they were going to give, right? That we took an offering for the actual event. It wasn't for me. We took it for the actual event. And I remember there's somebody in that room that they were going to give what was in their pocket. It's a couple $100. Their wife looked at them and said, no, both pockets, because they're notorious, they said, for only giving out of one pocket.
Yes.
Pulled out of both pockets, and it was over $1,000 that they ended up giving. That day, within an hour, they were on the phone with the bank because they gave part of that transaction digitally. The bank told them, hey, there's an account here that has money in it. And they said, no, that account is closed. The bank said, that account is not closed. That account's open. They said, no, we closed that account 3 years ago. They said, no, you didn't. The account's open and there's money in it. How much money? Over $9,000 was sitting in an account that they had no idea existed.
Come on.
That's an immediate harvest. Why? Because now their eyes were open. Had they never given, think about that. Had they never given, would they ever have found out about it? I don't know. I mean, there's always a possibility, but they didn't for the last 3 years.
Right.
But the moment they gave, it's as if God moved something and brought awareness. So this is what I found about generosity, is a lot of times it's not a check in the mail.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's not somebody giving you a Pentecostal handshake. Most of the time, it's God giving you an opportunity, and all of a sudden you see something that you never saw before, and then you're able to go get the harvest.
That's good, because it's always there, right?
It's there. It was already there. It always been there. You just had never seen it before. But when you gave, God opened your eyes and said, look at this. I mean, how many stories I know of people that gave and then all of a sudden had a business idea, or gave because they started a business and all of a sudden their business exploded.
Yeah.
This whole creating generous people thing came on the back of years of outrageous generosity.
It's a lifestyle.
I
got a question for you. Then I'm going to let you encourage somebody. The question is this: when you were in debt, there was a feeling about that, right? Heaviness, maybe, whatever. But you were in debt, and now giving your way out of debt, there's freedom. So to you, which feels better, trying to hoard it, keep it, I got to struggle to do this, or being able to release and help people? Which feels better to you, man?
Oh, 100%. It feels better living open-handed.
It's good.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's more joy, there's more peace, because now I'm operating in God's economy. You can't have this much seed in the ground and not see a miracle. You can't. It's
Right.
impossible.
Possible.
Sometimes the waiting season is extended, and and you wonder, when is it ever going to come? Is it ever going to come? It's guaranteed. Absolutely guaranteed. You just have to wait. You have to be patient, and it will come. And when it does come, it's always better than you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Always better than you thought it was going to be. So this is much better. You can sit around worrying.
Yeah.
There's not really a worry when you know who's in control of it.
That's good.
So
I'm going to let you close with this. So somebody's watching, listening,
yeah,
and they're in debt.
sure.
This is going to help. This is going to help people. I'm telling you. But they're in debt. They feel like quitting, feel like giving up, feel like they're never going to get out of debt. What would you tell them, even though you set it up this, in this whole podcast, but I just want you to pinpoint 2 to 3 things that you would encourage them with right now.
Yeah. Start today. Don't wait until tomorrow. Start today. Get organized, get in order, download the generosity blueprint. Again, if we can link it here in the show notes, or however we're going to do that, let's get it to them. It's free. Okay. This is the blueprint. Start today, fill it out, and organize your finances. With that said, the way you start, the biggest way, the best way, is you determine what you will give. Surrender every part of your life and every part of your finances. Surrender it over to the Lord and say, God, you gave it to me and it's yours. Now speak to me, and begin this journey of generosity where you open your hands and watch as God presents opportunities to you. Watch as God comes through in ways that you never thought were possible, and stay consistent, persistent, with a good attitude over a long period of time. Okay. I thought the check was coming from heaven when the Lord said, be generous. When the Lord told me he was going to get me out, I remember 5 years ago in the Poconos, I thought $125,000 check was going to come in the mail. And the Lord was very clear with me. It took you decades to get into this. It's going to take longer than a day to get out, because there's some lessons I want to teach you. Listen, the lessons you will learn over the next 12, 24, 36 months of giving generously, of seeing opportunity and taking it, and of paying off this debt, the lessons you will learn will last not only your lifetime, but lessons you can pass on to generations. And this is how generational wealth is built and generational wealth is passed. So it's bigger than just this moment. You've got to see the 30,000-foot view on this and realize you're here for a moment. And then you get to move on and go be with Jesus. But there'll be people here, and the lessons you learn and the legacy you leave, that's what matters the most. So start today, get moving, get rolling, give generously, punch fear in the face, aggressively attack it, score early, score often, and watch how 12 months from now, your life will be so much better.
That's so good. I hope people receive that. And right now, take the challenge, start today. Thank you so much for sharing those awesome principles you have shared with all of us. We'll apply them. It'll change our life. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, Jamey, how do people follow you? I want to make sure you throw that out there. How do people follow you?
Absolutely. You can follow us on Instagram at Jamey Paugh, JameyPaugh. You can find us at generositygroup.org. And then you can follow us on Instagram too at the Generosity Group. We are on Facebook as well. You can follow us there.
Nice. Again, thank you so much for being on this podcast. You have blessed us and inspired us, man. Love you. Appreciate you. Got to get you down here to Georgia.
Yes, sir. We'll go down there.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching this episode. I want to encourage you to share this episode. Encourage you to go on YouTube, like, and subscribe. We'll see you next week for another exciting story.